So how can you create a passionate, loving, sexual intimacy if there is a baby in your bed?
Welcome to the God, Money, and Sex podcast. My name is Raul Villacis, and I'm here with my host,
Vivian Villacis.
So today's topic is... What's today's topic? Talk about it.
Oh, we talked about SPARKS, and you didn't even like about that
So full
word.
disclosure, I
Didn't
was
want it.
against that topic. I mean, I was against the headline, Sparkle.
How can we create?
Especially it's going to be in my Facebook Live. And when I think about sparkles, I just think about all the filters and social media and the sparkles. So I wanted to talk about how do you bring that fire to change. But,
So how can we create it?
But it's your
How can we
podcast,
create?
it's your platform too. So I'm not going to take full control. So I'm going to respect and honor your decision to bring some sparkles into this
Not
podcast.
sparkle, spark. How can we spark? How can we create change in a relationship?
So everybody talks about change, right? Everybody wants to
Yeah.
have change. Everybody wants to, change their relationship, change their business, change their life. So let's have that conversation. Why is it that everybody wants change, but not everyone is achieving change?
And that's one of the things that I was thinking about too, because with one of my clients, we've been talking about how can we change in the relationship. Her thing is like, she sees her marriage as a project, right? And I think that in itself creates a little bit of stress because it's another thing to do. And for me, a project is kind of like I have a deadline. I need to get something done and I have all these things to create. And I told her, I said, how can we look at marriage? Can we look at a relationship as something different? And I was telling her like how we create change is by picking the one thing and not necessarily the one thing that she could change on the husband, but what is the one thing that she could change on herself?
So first of all, like you're talking about creating a change in their relationship, right?
Right.
You're creating a change, a dramatic change in the relationship because there's no passion in the relationship, right?
Right.
So for all the guys who are listening to this and girls also you listening to this, just make sure that you register to our podcast, subscribe, put a comment, let us know where you're watching us from. We're going to go into a little bit detail of what creates change and my take of what change is. Because this morning when I was meditating in my backyard, I saw the leaves changing. I saw the trees changing. I saw the weather changing. So like my take on change is always happening. Change is inevitable.
Happens.
Change is always happening.
Yeah.
So when I look at our relationship and our lives, it's like there's always change. I mean, we came into this country, we changed the environment. Like we were born in Ecuador, right? I mean, we didn't know each other in Ecuador. But our parents migrated to this country. There was change.
Right.
Then we had to learn a new English.
New language.
I'm learning English as we speak right now.
We both learned English.
A new language. We had to learn English. So we had to create change. So there was change in the environment.
Yeah.
And then as we grew up, it was different things and changes. So when we start looking at change is inevitable. There's always going to be change in our lives.
Change is always happening. Like whether we like it or not, it's happening. And whether we are conscious that it's happening or how it's happening or how we could make the change go our way or we go against it, I think that's another thing that happens.
So when people get married, just the same way that people, start a business is because they're looking for a change. You either tired of being single and fucking around and going all these places, or you're tired of having somebody else tell you what to do in your business. So you start a business with the intention of change.
Right.
You start a relationship with the intention of change. So I want people to understand that if you want to have change, there's always change in the world. Your life is always changing.
Right.
But if you look back at your crucial moments, when you came to this country, Vivian, was it your choice to come to this country?
No.
No, like
because it was a minor. It was a minor.
Yeah,
so my
I
parents
was a
decided
kid.
it was going to be a better situation.
So somebody decided
we came.
that there was a better future for you. So they
Yeah.
had to make the decision for you.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have control of that. Did
Yeah.
you have an option saying, no, Mom, I want to stay in Ecuador. How about my friends in here in Ecuador? Did you have that option?
We had a conversation about it, and I think the more that we thought about it, it's like, okay, there's not much more I could say. My parents ultimately had the decision, and even though I didn't like it, I had to go along with it because I knew that it was going to be the best thing for them, and in turn was going to be the best thing for us.
So like in my case, for example, I had no choice. My mother was like, either you leave, you're going, or you staying here. There was no choice. You're going to stay here by yourself because the whole family's moving.
You're so harsh. That's not true.
So my mom like raised us with like very Like, raised us to be independent, but we had to make decisions based on the framework of our environment. So when people want to change, there is a framework in that environment. There is an environment that is shaping you. Like when we're growing up, it's our parents shaping us, right? And then it was the culture shaping us. So when we have very little control as little kids, and the choices that we could make to move to this country, the choices that we had to make, even to go to school. Like I remember my parents, once we started, getting older, we wanted to move to a different neighborhood. And then at that point, I raised my hand and said, no, Mom, I'm not moving. I have my friends here. My school is here. So my mother just smacked me a couple of times and said, no, we're moving. Like, it's not your choice. It is my choice to move. And then we had to accept that change. So as we grow up, I think we have that mentality that we are, like, somebody's always making those rules. We have that same framework. So, like, for example, let's share a little bit of the story. Like, what happened when I asked your dad if I could marry you? What did he say when I was asking for your hand?
Oh yeah, you came up to him, you asked for my hand in marriage, and he said no.
He said no. And see, if I was in the framework of like, I'm gonna accept this no, I'm gonna accept this man's telling me this man's rule about no, I want my daughter, because he didn't just say no, I don't want you to be with her.
We were very young. I still had to finish college. Maybe he wanted, now you understand, he wanted something or someone more for me at the time. You
I would
were
have said
a
no
rebel.
To, just full disclosure, I don't hold anything against him.
No,
He's
I know
a good
you
guy.
don't.
I would have probably said no to me too.
Yes.
If you were coming into my daughter. So I don't blame him for that.
Yeah.
But see, I didn't take that no. I didn't take that no. I didn't say, okay, you know
It
what?
didn't stop you.
I'm going to accept the fact that you don't want me to marry your daughter. I said, I'm going to marry her anyways.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay for the wedding. I worked my ass off and I paid for the wedding. We paid for our place. So we have very little support, at least from your family. My family supported me from the beginning, because my mom was like, I can't wait for you to move out. You have this girl that she loves you. Like, it's good. She's good for you. She's gonna keep you out of trouble. So my parents were supportive in the relationship.
Yeah.
Your parents on the other side were not supportive of the relationship. So therefore, things were changing. Things were changing. So where I'm going with this is that change is always happening according to frameworks that we have in society too.
Yes, and we could make our own framework as we go along, as we did when we were in our wanting to get married. We decided, like, no, this is not going to stay this way. We're going to make this happen, whether they want it or not.
But why was it? Why did you not obey the rules of your parents, and they're refusing you to change? Why was it?
Well, I didn't want the conflict with my parents, but I also knew that I loved you and I wanted to be with you.
Because I was irresistible to you. Full disclosure, Vivian could not live without me. That's why she left her parents and moved
I
with
was
me.
so in love. There was no way of letting you go.
That's the emotion. So that's what I'm going with. That's the emotion of love. They were like, okay, forget my parents. They're saying no, but I love this man so much and I'm willing to leave everything, even if they don't want me to be with this man. There was that emotion. The emotion of change, the emotion like you were going against the rules, you were going against what your parents were telling you, right?
Yes.
So then we grow up, and then we have this marriage, and then we're driving each other crazy.
In a bad way.
In a bad way, because I bet you probably thought a couple of times like, shit, I should have listened to my parents. I should have listened to my dad. Why did I marry this guy?
By then I was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? He told me not to marry.
It was
so
already too late.
young.
You already accepted that.
That's right.
So in
No,
that
it wasn't
framework,
that bad.
in that environment, so what were your choices?
The choices was to make things either better or worse. I mean, and it was worse for a really long time. But then it was like, okay, what else can I do to make things better between the two of us? Because we were already there. Yes, you could file for divorce and then walk away from the marriage. But I think a lot of the times, now that I think about it, it had nothing to do with you. It had to do with a lot of stuff that I was going through, as we talk all the time.
But it's called growth, right? I mean, we were, recently married. We were going through a lot of shit. Your parents didn't want us to be together. There was a lot of chaos. I started a business too. So why did I start the business? I didn't want to be an employee. I didn't want to be, checking in 9 to 5. So I chose that.
Yeah,
I think
also
to start the business.
I think also like there's no transition period. Like there was no as I look back, like there was no transition period for me from like, being single to quickly being married and then having like this place to being a wife and a friend, and I had to be like, all these things, and I didn't have that transition period. And it was like you're saying, it was such an emotional roller coaster for me. And I think a lot of the times we don't take the time to acknowledge that part.
Because you made decisions based on your emotions.
Yes.
And you accepted the change based on your emotions.
Yes.
So your emotions at the end of the day are dictating your life. You're dictating what your behavior.
Yes.
So where I'm going with this is that change is always happening. Change
Yes.
is always happening in your life. And the choices that we make is based on the way that we feel. Like love got you to be, pretty much say, fuck you, dad, I'm going to marry this man. And then I'm like, yes, let's go.
Respectfully, I would never say that to my dad, first of all. I just talked to him.
I just imagine you saying that
to
him.
No. Not even for you. I would say that to my dad. I talked to him and I was like, I'm going to finish school. I promise you, daddy. He's a good man. Deep down, you don't know him, but deep down, he's a good man.
But you see that, like, is the framework. Is that we constantly operating based on frames.
Yes.
And that's why, when I'm teaching, my clients how to break through change is we first must break through that framework.
I love that.
Framework of who we have to be, the framework of how things have to be, and the framework of what people expect from us. Because at that moment you expected to be this person and you decided, you know what, I'm going to change. I'm going to change that story. Yeah. I'm going to change the way that my father looks at this man.
I'm going to change that expectation of what, I should be married at a certain age, or I should, it was so many things that you had to break through.
So in order for you to have that, so you decided, you made a choice. So,
yes.
If you listen to this, we're talking about change and how do you create change and how do you spark that change. So Vivian, wanted to make sure that we have that spark right here. What sparks change is having resistance. What sparks change in your life is when things are not supposed to be a certain way, or you refuse to accept things a certain way, sparks a change.
So it would be pain too.
Like the weather, for example, right now, it's summer, it's changing to fall. Now the trees, the leaves are falling. We have a whole, ritual, right, that the weather takes us through for us to withstand the winter.
Yeah, and I love that because it's like you see the change and you see the transition in things. Like, the leaves are changing, the weather feels cooler, whatever it is. But I think sometimes we're blinded to the change, and then we feel like, oh my gosh, it's winter. How do we get here? Like, what do you mean, how do we get here? How did we get to winter? We just had the fall. Like, didn't you feel? Didn't you see? Didn't you acknowledge the change?
And that's where the awareness comes in. When you are aware of the seasons, when you are aware of the phases in life, whether it's in marriage, whether it's in business, whether it's in your body, you are not going to be resisting change. Because I hear all the time, like, if my wife was as passionate as she was at the beginning of our relationship, then things would be better. Yeah. If my business was, on fire like I was at the beginning of the business, things would be better. If I just had the energy that I had when I was young, things would be better. But, I always tell them, like, you want things to stay the same. People are resisting the change that's happening right now in our lives.
And we can never really stay the same. I don't think
it's impossible.
We could even go backwards, but it's never really the same.
And that's the reason that most people are struggling right now with change, is because they're resisting change. Even right now on social media, we're going this Facebook Live, we have it in YouTube, we have a podcast. There's a lot of people out there resisting change in the media, and they refuse to say, well, what is this thing that young kids are doing?
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that. Or, I have a business owner. Look, I just heard a Sears is going to claim for bankruptcy this week because they don't have enough money to pay their debts.
I know. I hear that all the time. Like, how can you, put your whole life out there and then you don't care what people say, or I'm like, no, it's not that. I care what people say sometimes, and half of the time I do and half of the time I don't. But it's like the possibilities of us sharing our story, of sharing what we go through, it's bigger.
And creating an impact.
Right. It's bigger than being judged, which I really don't care about when it comes to that.
And that's because you had that emotion, and have that passion, have that love, the same feeling that you had when you met me and I was irresistible. And then you left your parents, the same feeling that's driving you to do what?
To do this,
To get uncomfortable.
That's right.
To get uncomfortable. So the whole drive to change is to get uncomfortable. The whole drive is like to start doing shit that makes you feel uncomfortable. If we refuse to adapt to the change, what we're saying really in our minds, like, I want things to stay the same because I want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I refuse to grow. And people don't change because they're refusing to grow. They're refusing to adapt to the culture, to adapt to the new market, to adapt to the changes in their marriage, to adapt to the business.
Yeah.
And if people who don't adapt eventually will die.
Which is sad, but that's true, because so many things could end just because you're not willing to make a like, whether it's something minimal or something big. Like, if you're not making that change, it's just eventually going to die. It just reminds me of one of our clients. I was talking to her and I was telling her like a couple of things that we could do to make the change. And one of the things that we were talking about is I think her baby is like 1 or 2 years old. I don't remember. And the baby, and I've heard this like many, many times. And this happened to us too at the beginning of our marriage when we had our babies. Our babies are now no more babies, 11 and 12-year-old. But the baby is sleeping in the middle of the husband and the wife.
In the same bed.
In the same bed. Beautiful. She goes, beautiful king size bed, but the baby's in the middle. And I'm thinking like, okay, how long has the baby been sleeping in the bed? The baby has been sleeping in the bed for the past 2 years. So how can you create a passionate, loving, sexual intimacy if there is a baby in your bed? I am a mother and I totally understand that, but I'm telling her like, you need to make that transition already. Like that baby no longer belongs in the bed. She has beautiful, a bed for the baby, a bedroom, but the baby doesn't sleep there. And then how do you want your husband to come to bed and or you to lure your husband into bed? And when you have a baby there,
but this happened to us. You were the one who was bringing the babies to the bed, and you were like, I don't want them to go, Raul, to the room because they're crying.
But that was only for a little while. I said, I need my sleep. I am 100% for my sleep. And
but I remember I said that from the beginning to you. I said like, if you don't teach them to sleep in their own bedroom now, it's gonna be harder when they grow older.
Yeah, and I knew that.
Abigail crying for like hours.
Yes.
And you were like, you're so cruel, Raul.
Alejandro too. He would cry all the time. I'm like, okay, let's just bring him to bed. But then you were like, no, their bed. This is our bed. This is our sanctuary. This is ours. And I think, for me, like that was one of the best things I could have done because then I had the difference.
I knew that they were going to mess up our game. I knew the kids were going to mess up our game because I've seen it many times. I've seen this movie play out so many times.
Yes. And now I hear it all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I've gone through it. And I know that it could be done. That baby no longer belongs in your bed. But it's like she's willing to resist the change because, it's too uncomfortable to take the baby and back and forth, so they could sleep in separate rooms. And it causes heartache and it causes, pain. But I'm telling her, like, the end result of having your time with your husband, the end result of you having, like, clear sleep,
being able to be together, just being able to have that, have the space. They're with kids all the time. But again, it goes with getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It goes with doing things that they're not willing to do. And if you want, there's always a sacrifice. I always tell people the same thing is nothing worthwhile is ever going to be easy.
Yes.
If you're not willing to pay the price, you're not going to get what you want.
And I think like, the more that I see, like when I go through stuff like this is like, I have to see the end result. Like, what is it going to look like? And then envision it and almost like feel it and taste it and know what it's going to look like at the end. Because if you don't, then it's like, oh, okay, it doesn't really matter. Or I could live with this. It doesn't like, it's such an comfortable.
Because emotionally, you haven't bought into it.
Yeah.
So if you want to create the change, you have to emotionally buy into it.
That's
so if
right.
you want to emotionally buy into it, you have to see the big picture. You have to see the end result. You have to see the passionate relationship. You have to see the body that you want. You have to see the business that you want. You have to have the end result. You have to be emotionally, have to buy into it.
Yeah.
And you have to have leverage. Yeah. So let's give them some insights. If you want to create change, you have to get uncomfortable. If you listen to this right now, there's a time right now that you have to write things down. We're going to go through a couple of things that will create change in your life. Number one is?
I think if you want to create change, and I think one of the biggest things that I've done is create change with myself first. Even though I wanted to change you, I started to change myself.
Well, that's a whole different conversation. Like people, understand one thing. You are never going to be able to change people unless you're willing to change yourself first.
Yeah.
You can't change the market. You can't change the business. The only thing you're in control of is changing you.
Yeah.
So if you refuse, if you say, I want to change my husband, I want to change my business, like you're going to bring the same baggage to another relationship. You're going to bring the same baggage to another business.
Yeah.
It always starts and ends with you.
Yeah.
So the first is make the intention to make the change in you first before you start asking other people to change.
That's right.
The second is buy it emotionally. You have to buy it emotionally. You have to be willing to see the big picture. You have to have an emotional vision to it. It's just wanting things is not enough.
And I think when I do that, the emotional part is like the meditation and then really truly seeing the big picture or the small picture or however you want to see it. And also journaling, like it helps me out a lot. Like when I journal and I like write down specific details of what it's going to look like. And I remember writing, a couple of times, like what I want Raul to say to me and what I want him to do to me, all these things. And I'm like, I look back on those journals. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what he's doing today. It only took
Journaling is
19
powerful.
years.
But it's powerful because actually, you know, I found the book.
Yeah.
And that's my code sheet right now. Like I found the book where you wrote all those things, and now
You
I'm
have
reading
a
it every
journal.
single day.
Okay, fine.
No, I'm
So I
just
should
kidding.
start. I should
don't-
continue to
know.
write.
I should look for that journal though.
Yeah. I
Just
look
give
at
me some
yours.
clue.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what is he writing? Everything's about
Oh,
business.
you look at me so good. I'm gonna start journaling some things for you.
Everything's about
directions.
business. Everything.
Please.
Like, where am I? Where am I? I'm not in this
Can
pages.
you please cook me my 6 meals that I'm committed to eat? That's a whole different
No.
conversation.
No.
I'm committed to eat 6 times a day. My trainer has me in a strict diet 6 times a day, and Vivian refuses to cook my 6 meals a day.
Yes, only because when we got married, I was very specific with you. I said I would do anything for you, but I am not going to cook.
Well, that was agreement, and I said I bought into it.
That's
and
right.
I said, and then for the past 19 years, I never asked you to cook for me.
That's right.
So
That's
we're
why I
gonna
love
keep,
you.
we'll keep on going.
That's why I love you.
Fine. All right. So the first thing is make sure that you make the commitment to make the change in you.
Change
The
it.
second is have an emotional leverage for the change.
Emotional attachment?
And the third thing is
What would you say?
progress. Things
Oh,
don't
I was
happen
not thinking
overnight.
about that.
Things doesn't happen overnight. Like people want to change their relationship, their business, everything overnight, their body overnight. Things don't happen overnight. It's progress.
Yeah,
It's
that was
just
for me. I want things to happen right away. Like I go exercise and I'm like, okay, did I lose a pound? You know, and that doesn't happen. Or, you know, when I pray to God and I feel like, okay, is he listening today? Is he going to answer my prayer? And, you know, we are in a culture that's so like
instantaneous. We want things, everything right now.
away.
We want things right away.
But our marriage has taken 19 years. Our business has taken over what you've been in the business for
20 years, almost 20 years, yeah.
over
As
20
soon as we
years.
got married, before we
That's
got married,
right,
I started the
that's right,
business.
that's right.
So, you know,
It
it's
takes
going to
time.
take time. You're going to go through the valleys. You're going to go through the struggles. You're going to go through, like, life's always changing.
Yes.
So instead of asking things to change, you create that change. At the same time, you adapt to the change too.
And be patient with it, because I think change does happen, but we want to see it right away. And then we want, you know, big things to happen or big changes to be seen. But change happens small steps at a time.
1% at a time. So this
Yeah.
morning I sent a message to my guys, to my clients, and I told them, I said, if you want your wife to change, if you want the market to change, if you want the business to change, shit is not going to happen. She's not going to change just
Yeah.
because you want her to change.
Yeah.
Your business is not going to change just because you want your business to change. You have to become that change.
Yes.
You have to have that energy of change, and you have to see the things that you're doing inside of you first before you're asking your partner to change. Because little by little, by you creating that change, you will attract the changes to the people around you. You will create that energy in your
Yeah.
business, in your marriage, that
It's
people
inspiring.
will see that,
Yeah.
hey, like he could do
Yeah.
it, I'm going to be able to do it too. Or
Yeah.
if he could actually change the way that he sees things, then I could probably do the same thing too.
That's right.
So it's not looking for other people to change, it's you create that of what
change.
you want other people to treat you or to be like, and you become the example and you become the leader and you lead with intention.
That is so true. So true.
So when I end with that, if you're watching us, just make sure that you you subscribe to our podcast, God Money Says Podcast, in iTunes, YouTube, follow us in Instagram, follow us in Facebook, follow us everywhere except for our bedroom. Keep it private. Until next time, learn it,
Live it, experience it, love life.